All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Courage Coaching and Counseling Podcast. My guest today is Martin Torres. Welcome, Martin, to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Savannah. I'm really excited about our conversation and just getting to be a part of what you're doing. I
Yeah,
think this is great.
thank you. Um, uh, you are a pastor, a coach. It's a unique combination. You also uh, are doing podcasting and help with several churches in Oregon and Washington. So I'm excited to talk to you about where courage has shown up in your life and in the lives of the people that you help.
Yeah, and yeah. As far as the whole pastor part, I mean, I would I would I would kind of maybe say it as like a worship pastor who's kind of shepherding, providing pastoral care, in everything that I do, pretty much. But yeah, yeah, and coaching, it's really great to just kind of use that as a way to help creatives kind of find clarity, focus, and momentum forward. And here in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm still trying to um, build more on that, get that out there. But yeah, there's a couple of things going on, I'm
Yeah,
sure we'll discuss in this
yeah.
conversation.
Be, um, I I'm curious about your work with creatives
Yeah.
and musicians and artists because definitely art and creativity requires a lot of bravery and courage. Um, but before we dive into your work as a coach, can you share with our listeners a little bit about your background?
Yeah. Well, I am a Hispanic, Latino, however you want to. But I grew up. I was born in Naples, Florida. My parents were working, I believe, in the oranges. Mom was pregnant at the time, and she had me in Naples, Florida. And then they kind of went back home to the Lower Valley Yakima, where I was raised with the rest of my siblings. It's a community of a lot of agriculture like apples, hops, cherries, asparagus. A lot of Latino because of that. A lot of work there, and that's where I was introduced to the story of God. And I grew up in a Spanish Pentecostal church. Eventually, um, found my calling at the age of 14 while filling in for a worship leader that had not come back from a trip, and I kind of stepped up. It was scary, but as I owned it, I just began to realize, wow, this is something I want to do more of. Um, and then I just started doing that more. And then eventually, in the same church, I would get to know the love of my life, who I've been married to for almost 21 years now. And after the first year and a half, I felt like God was calling me to continue my training. So we moved to Dallas, Texas, went to Christ for the Nations, um, moved to Mexico, Querétaro, Mexico for full time ministry and as a worship pastor. Moved back to the States, went back to undergrad, to business school, graduate school, all while helping churches just as a fill in worship leader. And we moved to Virginia Beach, and we were there for a short while going to school and helping a church plant that met in a movie theater. And then we moved here 10 years ago to Portland, Oregon. I'm the oldest of five siblings, and all of our family, my side and my wife's, they're all in the Yakima Valley, except an aunt and uncle and a couple cousins of my wife's side that live here in Oregon.
Mm.
So,
Yeah. So you moved to, to Portland uh, for a ministry position?
no. It's that when God's hand is over you and He wants you here, so you're there as long as He needs you there, and then all of a sudden He does this, and you're like, I something's happening.
Mm.
I think we're moving again, um, and uh, and I woke up early in the morning, and we were kind of, should we move back to Dallas, Texas? We had a church there called Gateway Church. A couple of pastors there were mentors of mine, and Or, my wife said, what about Portland? And I was like, oh, we really don't know anybody in Portland.
mm,
It's closer to family, an hour and a half, 2.5 hours away from Yakima Valley.
mm,
So we just slept on it for a couple of days, woke up really early in the morning, like at 4, and I told my wife, we're moving to Portland.
mm,
So with the church's blessing that we were helping, God always would provide finances for us, and we just moved to Portland. And I remember there's a prayer a pastor said while we were, when we were moving to Virginia Beach, Virginia. Before we were there, we were in Dallas, and we were talking on the phone, and I will never forget this prayer. She goes, Lord, we thank you because you not only call us to a place, but you always call us to a people.
mm.
So that's always my prayer, Lord. Who are these people you are calling us to here in Portland?
Yeah.
What do they look like? What do they sound like?
Mm,
And yeah, and that's, then after 2 years, we ran into Joel Summers of Access Covenant Church, to kind of help build that from ground up. And then, you know, but it wasn't kind of like we had a job opportunity, you know. It was just God said go, and we said where. He said over there, and we're like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So the place uh was the first answer, and then you found your people, and you found
Yeah,
out like
exactly,
what he
exactly.
had for you. Yeah. When you're
And
here.
it always it's and it's always been the right kind of pastor that we come alongside to partner with, and
Mm,
it just all the things just fall in place. I think that's how God works, right? Like,
mm,
um and you're speaking about courage, like every time we've moved 14 times, so it's
yeah.
like, Lord, give us courage um to be obedient, and even when we can't see that far ahead, you've never left us, you've never forsaken us, you've always provided for us. So help
Mm,
us to not doubt you, help us to just believe that you are who you say you are, and you will do what you will say would do, that you will do. And he's never failed us, and he's been so good to us,
yeah.
and yeah.
That's awesome, Martin. So you mentioned uh partnering with pastors.
Yeah,
I've heard heard some horror stories. It doesn't always go smoothly. It doesn't always seem like God's working it out.
yeah,
Um, what are some of the lessons you've learned to make it work smoothly with pastors, like as a worship in your role as a worship pastor? Like,
yeah.
how do you make that go smoothly?
Yeah, well, I definitely believe, I mean, prayer, always, um, w- I remember there was there was a friend of mine who was a pastor in Puyallup, Washington, that we were visiting, and there was a young Marine who had just finished and is now back with the rest of us, and he was looking for a church. And I remember I was sitting down with him one day, and that Sunday, me as a guest, and I go, so what brings you here? And he's like, well, I'm looking for a church. Um, you know, and this is my first time visiting. And of course, I know my friend who's the pastor there, and we've known each other for 4 years. So, I kind of got a good idea of like who he is and his heart and what he's all about. And so I said, I was curious,
Mm,
especially as a coach, we're curious. So I just put my little coach on, my hat on. I was like, well, what kind of church would that look like? What are important qualities that a church should have,
mm,
for you? And, he kind of mentioned a couple things, and I was like, well, I think you've arrived. My friends here have those qualities that you're looking for. And I think,
mm,
what are qualities you look for in a pastor that, and for me, it's always, I mean, just authenticity, just
mm,
this love for God, and love for God's people. Um, and, which I think is really key. Does my wife feel the same way? You know, that's really important too. There's been a couple churches where I look at my wife, I'm like, what do you think?
as much of as you guys have moved, you guys have to be on the same
Uh,
page.
Yeah, yeah,
But you have each other.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. At the end of the day, we go back home to each other, and we got to make sure like we're in this together, and yeah. And for again, going back to like qualities, you know, is this a person, I can see myself liking, like every day at every meeting, at every service, like, is this somebody that I feel has something that can draw even out of me things about me that I may not know that are there. It's just somebody that I can really see myself, that I can be honest with, genuine, transparent with. And sometimes some of these things kind of fall into play over time, because you're learning to build trust, and you're learning to kind of find a rhythm that works for you and them. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of partnering with their vision, partnering with their leadership, for what God has placed in their heart. And every pastor except maybe one, no, maybe two, where um, it was not a really great experience. Um, um, because over time, there was just something there where it's just like, ooh, that's not healthy. Why am I, there was just this struggle where, um, yeah, and it was in a different country. And so, uh,
Some
but
cultural things, maybe.
yeah, yeah, but I'll tell you one thing, it opened our eyes, and it helped. It was an opportunity for God to grow us and to grow our perspective, and yeah, yeah, yeah. So I would say, definitely say, man, be praying, God, who is this? Who are these people that you're calling us to be a part of and to partner with, and do we believe in the vision? What's that first impression that we're getting? Pay attention to those things. Is my wife in agreement? And it doesn't have to be something right away. Just bring it back to God and say, God, what do you think? The qualities that we're looking for in a church. It's multicultural. We want it to be, a place where, that has that has good, practical, relevant teaching. you know um for us, it was those two things, that it was multicultural, and that the teaching, was practical and relevant. And yeah, especially in seminary, this, Savon. We've been a part of so many different kind of, under so many teachers in seminary. And so I was kind of like, I want something very practical, very relevant, someone that's likable and approachable. And I think we've arrived, since it's been like almost 6 years at New Hope. They have those qualities, and we believe in what they're doing, and it's exciting, and it's family now, and we've
Mm,
shared a lot of tears. We've shared a lot of opportunities of serving together and seeing people's lives affected in such an incredible way, and
mm.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Earlier, before we hit record, you were sharing some of the new things, the changes with your church. Could you share a little bit about uh, your church, and also a little more your thoughts on multicultural church or ministry, especially in Portland, Oregon?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I will tell you this. Moving here in Portland, Oregon, I've never seen so much. At least when we were helping with the church, that was kind of like multicultural, right? And so much interracial families, and it's such a beautiful thing to see. We got friends that are from Guatemala, married to a girl who's white, half Cantonese. We got a friend of mine that's, she's from Argentina, and he's like Filipino, and they have these beautiful children and just incredible families. And we're like, whoa, I think we're the only ones married to the same kind of culture. Me and my wife, I feel like we're out of place, But it's such a beautiful thing to see here in Oregon, because I think we need more multicultural churches. Um, and I think it's happening, and I know there's a lot of churches out there that I may not know about, but God is definitely bringing pastors who have a heart for a church that's full of different colors and languages. And that's who we're called to be, and it's a beautiful thing when you get to see it firsthand. um, our church, um, since transitioning, I mean, we've always been a multicultural church. Um, I think before this transition happened, and I started getting involved and just saying, hey, how can I help the vision? How can I just participate and contribute with what you guys are doing. I remember the first day they asked me to pray if I'd be okay with praying in Spanish, and it was normally when I lead worship, before we break and say hi to each other, and then before the sermon. And I remember I would pray in English and then pray in Spanish. And this one lady came up to me at the end of the service and she wrote on a piece of envelope and she gave it to me and then she left. And I still have it on my fridge. And she said, I just come back from my home country. I don't think it was Colombia or Honduras.
Mm,
And she said this was the first time I had ever heard my own language in our church.
mm,
And it was such a beautiful thing to kind of like, wow. I mean, this church has been here for a long time, but Pastor John had been here for like for 4 or 5 years already, and but it was just one of those things where it's just like, man, I'm just so grateful that we are the kind of church that are taking, you know, the right steps, steady but surely, and where where everyone can feel inclusive. Eventually, we'll have different other languages, but another time. One of our members came up to me at the end of the service and she had met somebody who was like in his 60s and he was a Latino, and she was telling me when he came to church that morning that they were talking amongst themselves and saying, hey, there's really nobody that looks like me, or sounds like me.
mm.
And then all of a sudden that just happens to be the day where I'm leading worship again and they want me to say a prayer in Spanish.
Wow.
And she told me when that was happening that she looked at him
Yeah.
and she said, he looks like you and he sounds like you too.
Mm,
And I'm just like, I'm so grateful that I get to hear those kind of stories
mm,
because,
mm,
you know, um, yeah, and just to be a part of what God is doing at New Hope, and now we are a little bit bigger church because we've adopted Mount Scott Church of God, and they have now become New Hope, and they brought a Spanish ministry with them with Pastor Omar, and now we have a Spanish ministry, and it's surreal
mm,
because it's been since 2003 where I was a part of an all Spanish speaking church, and now like I mean it's not yeah, and now I'm leading worship at our Spanish service, and I'm like, oh my god, and we're singing, every once in a while we're singing those Spanish songs you grew up with. I'm like, oh my god, I feel like I'm a 10-year-old again, and like wow, and
mm,
so while this transition is now happened and we're now one church, it's been such a joy partnering with Pastor Omar and just saying, how can we be partnering with you and what God is doing through the Spanish community at our church, and just to make sure that he feels supported and that he's not alone and we're in this together. It has been such a blessing, and we're really excited for all that God has in store for other ministries that God is doing, um, and what He has yet to do.
mm. It's uh, it's neat during a really hard year uh, worldwide, um, but also like in the life of many churches, you guys combined forces and grew.
Yeah, I know it's it's a God thing,
Mm,
and yeah, yeah, and that's because it took almost a year of just leasing a place that we're still leasing because we're now like renovating, getting things, the building ready, and just kind of. But it's been such a joy just to kind of finally be together, being able to get together, you know, um, getting to see people, keeping our distance, but just being able to talk to them in person has just been such a joy. And
mm,
uh, every service we just feel like our hearts are full because we get to just see how we're doing and
mm.
get to be together.
Yeah, nice, nice. So the you've got years of experience uh working in the church. Uh, can, can you share a little bit about how you uh, got involved in coaching?
Coaching. I was in the grad program at Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and um, Dr. Joseph Umidi. was overseeing the coaching program. I think he might have just taught one coaching course, if I'm not mistaken, and I took it. And the more I was like just kind of taking it in, I realized something like, wow, this is, I've never approached ministry this way where, we grow up, at least in my experience, we're like, that hero complex. Well, this is what you should do. This is what, and, but this was like a whole different way of kind of ministry where like practicing the ministry of just being fully present, and kind of helping them navigate, um, not with suggestions or answers, but kind of asking the right kinds of questions to help them see things from a different perspective and helping bring out their best self to this situation. And it's
Mm,
and it was, at first it was like, wow, uh, it's like somebody throwing a wrench in what your the norm is in
mm.
kind of two-way
What you're used to.
yeah, than what I'm used to. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it took me back and
Mm,
for a bit. And the more, and even then the beginning was a little rough just because the inside of me was just like trying to get used to this new way of being fully
The,
present.
the 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 pastor side of you
Yeah,
that
exactly.
wants to that wants to preach, or, or
Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
my first coaching book was Jane Creswell, and I think
For listeners, can you share
Jane,
who Green?
yeah, Jane Creswell. I think her book on Christ-centered coaching, and that blew my mind. It was just like, this made so much sense.
Mm,
Like, why this ministry of coaching is so important. Because, one thing, and it'll tie into like, what I've been passionate about lately, later on in the interview, but people want to feel seen. People want to feel understood.
mm,
Um, people want to feel supported, seen, heard, um, seen, heard, understood, and supported. And I think coaching is such a great way to help people feel seen and heard and understood, and allowing them to be able to speak and hear themselves. um, and people are so resourceful, more resourceful than they think they are. And if we just give them the opportunity for them to just speak out loud and have an opportunity in space, a safe space where they
mm,
can experience those things.
mm,
I mean, at the end of these kind of conversations, I mean, they feel like they can own it. They have something in place, where they have that clarity, they have that confidence in themselves, they have that focus. And
mm,
all we did is just help them feel seen, help them feel heard and understood and supported. you know and
mm,
and I'm like, whoa, like, this transcends in so many other areas of my life, as a leader, as a musician,
mm,
as a providing pastoral care. And like, especially in a culture of today where it's just, we don't have time for that. We don't have time to feel seen, heard, and understood. We just
mm,
want to, like, we just want to put up another quote. It's like, but rather, like,
mm,
how is that quote like resonating with you? Like, that's what I want to know. I
mm.
think that's a great quote, but like, I want to know,
Going
how is it resonating?
deeper, how it impacts. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we need to have more of those kind of conversations. And um, because, yeah, even today, I remember I was asking this one young adult, how have you been? I've been good. Well, what's been good about it? Highlight, what have been some highlights for you? I really want to know.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
they
People
just
aren't
don't
used to the follow up.
know. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they just don't know how to do with that much, like,
Mm,
someone being fully present and
yeah.
actually genuinely
Yeah.
caring. Like,
Yeah.
I really want to know, and
I think like sometimes in that moment, like you are maybe even more curious than they are,
yeah.
right? Like your desire in that moment is to be fully present to that person. I think we're walking around very often not fully present to ourselves,
Mm,
and so sometimes a coach or carving out time, slowing down to consider these what is going on with me, um, i- is is a shift from the the rhythm, the pace that we're going at these days, and
that's so true.
that connection, having a
It's
connection,
yeah,
actually answer that question.
it's like saying, hey, uh, we owe it to ourselves to give ourselves permission to slow down. You know, I mean, do you believe you deserve this space, this time? Like, what's at risk if I don't slow down? You know,
Mm,
what's at risk if I don't have someone to share these these things in my life, um, that need to get out, these things that need to be said, and
mm,
and to I think as for me, I've been coached in with different kinds of people, especially some of our coaches who are trying to get hours to get their certificate, and they're like, "Hey, Martin, can I coach you?" I go, "Yes, you can." You
yeah,
know,
free coaching, of course. Yes, bring it.
so it
We
has
all
been
need it. Yeah,
exactly, and it's just been so comforting to, and such encouragement for me to just have that space where I can feel seen, feel heard, and understood and supported. And also at the end of it all, just to feel like, wow, this plan that I have now just came out of me and came from me. And this is the plan. And I have accountability and like I can do this. And um, so yeah, I mean, coaching is such a powerful tool in whatever kind of professional platform we use it in, and I'm
yeah,
grateful to have stumbled across it and to have um, you know to use it and still learning how to be better at it here in the Pacific Northwest.
yeah. So, what are what are the issues? What are some of the things that you're coaching folks in?
Well, with coaching with Martin, .com, it's all about leading, creating, and performing like we were meant to. Like, what are things that are keeping us from leading, creating, performing with confidence? And I think one of them
Mm,
is support. A lot of teams that I've been helping, during the green room or during breaks before the next service. Every once in a while we have conversations about just self confidence and and um, support. Like, what kind of support do they need, and what does that look like here right now, and what could it look like? What would you want that to look like moving forward in order for you to um, grow or develop this skill, whether it's worship leading or as a musician. This last church that I was at, um, you know, there's musicians that are just needing support, and like this one musician, he's a guitar player, and um, all it takes is like, because I'm an extrovert, and for me, talking it comes easily, and just meeting people I may not know, have never met. I talk to them like if I've known them forever. So I think that's a benefit to an advantage for me. But just kind of helping people feel seen and like, hey, what is one thing that you would like to improve in? Um, and well, here are some ways. If you want, we can definitely do a Zoom, and I can share some techniques with you. I think the biggest thing is feeling supported, feeling like you can, like there are people here who actually want to help develop you more. Um, because as leaders, sometimes we can feel like we either don't have time for that because we also have other things going on in our lives. But as a coach, is just taking those moments, like it can be 15 minutes of just kind of breaking that down. What do they want? um, what does support look like, and what do you need? What do you have to do in order for you to get that? And how do you envision that going um, as it comes together? You know.
Mhm.
But at
Mhm.
the end of it all, I was like, so what do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to do it by?
Helping them be clear on their goal, but then um, encouraging them to take action. And what are you gonna do?
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
When are you gonna start?
Mm,
You know?
mhm. Yeah.
And then it's over, and then we go up to the stage and start leading worship again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just even in uh, brief moments, in a green room, you're like you're in coach mode, pastor and coach. It's like it's really like overlaps for you.
Yeah, it's yeah, there's moments where there we can, put the coach hat on, and there's moments where, we can be talking about how to be a better, how to have a better impact as an uncle, with somebody else who is an uncle to nephews and nieces, and
Mhm.
um, here's what I'm doing. These are things that I have in place that I can take advantage of, and yeah, so very heart to heart moments, and it sometimes leads to having coffee on another, outside, and talking more about it. And uh, but mostly it's just those moments that we have in the green room, or after the service where we just get to connect and you know.
Nice. So, speaking of talking more about it, you've got a podcast. Can you tell us about your podcast?
Yeah, the podcast is called Northwest Creatives Podcast. Um, it's uh, we call it, let me see here, sharing our stories and inspiring one another. And that's pretty much what it is. We get an opportunity to meet creatives here in the Pacific Northwest and give them an opportunity for them to share their story, with the hopes that there are other like minded creatives who may be wondering how to be a worship leader more equipped, how to be a better graphic designer, how to be a film director, and really kind of introducing the Pacific Northwest to their very own creatives that might be just down the street. And hopefully that their story will inspire them to uh, take the next steps. I grew up in a family where I didn't have, I'm sure you did too. I mean, I'm 41, so we didn't have YouTube. You know, uh, um, I was like the only
we
musician.
we we only had 4 TV channels. Growing
um,
up.
I didn't know what books to read. We didn't have podcasts, YouTube, so I didn't know who. Yeah, I didn't know, like how to grow as a musician or how to grow as a worship leader. So this podcast is kind of like, reaching out to people who don't have family, who don't know how to support them, not because they don't want to, they just don't know how. Maybe they're the only graphic designer in their family, or the only
Mm,
person in their family that wants to be a film director, or a dancer, or building computers. I don't know, but we want to be able to provide inspiration through story, and also, to give an opportunity for these creatives to, have exposure for for what they're doing, and
mm.
here in the Pacific Northwest. And it's been pretty exciting. I get to make a new friend, and also in the same time, I get to be inspired by them. And God's just reminding me like how creative He is. And yeah, Pacific Northwest is full of creatives with incredible stories, and yeah, and we get to do that through Northwest Creatives
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. So
Yeah.
this podcast isn't just for folks in ministry.
No, no, no. It's open to all creatives. If you're a creative, I want to hear about your story. Um, yeah, because every no matter who you are, where you come from, we all have a story to share. You know, and I want to, yeah, yeah. And some are going to be, Christians, and some may not be Christians, but part of it all is just to, stories matter.
Right,
And
right.
all creativity comes from the one who is the creator. I think it's who is it? His name is, I got it right here. He says something that's pretty great. Rich Kirkpatrick, he says, we create because it is who we are as image bearers of an amazing creator. And yeah, yeah, I think, yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that. I just think everyone has a story to share, and there's inspiration in all stories, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we definitely, yeah. I'll just say that.
Well, uh, I'm curious, Martin. W- Where would you describe you, uh, where you are in your story?
Yeah, it's a great question, Savannah. I am in a place where there's a lot of opportunity to now invest more time and energy in things that give me joy in life.
Mm,
Um, my marriage, my family, um, coaching, creating, uh, and this podcast. Um, so now that I have a better work schedule, and I'm not on staff at our church, which gives me opportunity and flexibility to help other churches. But I feel like I have this I don't want to say release or permission, but I think I'm in a better, healthier place where now I have no excuse to just really let myself go, in the sense of giving more time to these things,
mm,
because there's just so much in me, Savan, that I've been putting on hold.
mm,
There's things that I've been just almost feel like I've been like, it almost seems like I'm in a cave, and there's just a little light,
mm,
just at a desk, and all you see is my back, and I'm just kind of just like
mm,
just creating, and I'm like, is now the time, God? Is this the time? And I feel like I'm in this season where I feel God saying, "You ready?
mm.
Let's go."
You're
So,
you're in, you're in a new season and you're just getting started.
yeah, and as a 41-year-old, um, I feel like I have to be more. I'm trying to be very careful with where my energy and time goes, um,
Mm,
and I want it to be very, like, I want it to have the greatest impact it can have, and whether is being the best uncle to my nephews and nieces, and being very intentional
mhm,
to I'm creating this resource for songwriters, and it's like 95% done. The meat and heart of it is done. It's just the promotional part,
mm,
and just putting myself out there, and like, this is a creative resource for creatives, and I can't wait for it to bring value and to help you become a better storyteller. um and with this podcast, just kind of, I need to, like, already have a list of people for the next 2 months, and just schedule it and get it done. And yeah, so in this season of my life, I'm just giving myself permission to just create and release, and be intentional in everything that I do. I think it was Craig Rochelle, um, the creator of the Bible app, one of the Bible apps, and he says it's not so much about working hard, but managing our energy smarter.
mm,
And that's what I'm trying to do, Savant. I'm just trying to be okay. There's no more excuses. Um, I just feel like this release. I have a great, awesome wife who's there, who's supporting me. I have a great church that's there and lets me serve and contribute, in wonderful ways. Um, but now it's like, as a 41-year-old, I'm like, okay, all right, what are you waiting for? Let's go. Let's go. Let's do it. And let's be a blessing to the world, to our community, to our family, to our friends, to creatives, and you have everything you need, and
mm.
so do it. And that's what I'm doing.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The I,
I I have. You were talking about courage and being brave. I feel like I'm braver this season of my life. I have more courage this season of my life, and it's not so much about waiting for people's confirmation, affirmation.
mm,
It's just believing in myself enough. Like I have something to share with the world, and it's unique, and it's nothing like anybody else. And I have a story to share, and I have something that I believe can bring value and contribute in a way that will be a big blessing for people. And so, what are you waiting for, Martin? Just do
mm, yeah.
it. Yeah,
Yeah. It's so awesome to hear you confidently say that and get to that point. Um, at 41, like I just turned 50 last year, and yeah, I wish I was more confident at 40, 41. Um, so it's awesome to just dream and think of what's ahead for you.
yeah, yeah. And this last year and a half, maybe 2 years of 2 years have definitely been the toughest and the most scariest seasons of my life. And
Mm,
but it was beauty out of ashes. you know,
mm,
and yeah, and I think you know a little bit about of those things that I was dealing with as a creative, as a human, as a husband, as a man, as a child of God, and
mm,
just scared for my life. And I've never had that ever happen to me. And
mm,
what I'm talking about is panic attacks, and um, nobody in my family's ever had them. And they just, what is this?
mm,
And
mm.
doctor says I'm good.
You all had to learn from what
Yeah,
you went through. Yeah.
yeah, and it was the scariest season of my life, but it was also the most eye-opening, um, community loving, um, um, freedom releasing, that I've ever experienced. And I think it definitely needed to happen, so that I can kind of stay. You're talking about slowing down, Savan.
Yeah. What did you have to change?
I had to, as I slowed down and I really looked at my whole life, I had to make a journal and I wrote down these are brings me joy in life, but all these other things, that can sometimes be a good thing too. We're bringing frustration, worry, concern, fear, and I had to go, okay, God, help me to know what to do with this. How do I have more of these other things in my life, and how can I minimize? And it can be practical things like bills, but it also, like education, not finishing, at a certain age,
Mm,
um,
mm,
it can be releasing of the past. It can be things that weren't accomplished, and I really
mm,
started bringing these to Jesus, and like, Jesus, help me to find freedom, help me. And to do that, I had to really forgive myself for a lot of little things, even when I was a little kid, just thinking about as far back as I could, and confronting it and bringing it before Jesus and saying, Jesus,
mm,
I know you already forgave me for these things,
mm,
but I had to hear myself forgive myself,
mm.
you know? And
Even
then,
things when you were little that
yeah,
still
like I will say,
affecting you.
I don't have no shame saying this out loud. I remember I had my little Dotson dog. His name was Chico.
Mhm,
I He's okay. Nothing bad happened to him. You know,
mhm,
he lived a good life. But I remember when I was a little kid, teenager, like maybe like a 13-year-old, I put him in the freezer for
mm,
like 5 seconds just to see, and I was like, and then I took him out, and then I thought it was silly, right?
mhm,
I'm the most loving dog person on the face of this earth, um, but I didn't realize like that was one of those things that came up during this panic attack. And I'm like,
mm,
Martin,
mm,
I forgive you for, there's just some things in my life I had to forgive myself for. Like, you
mm,
don't need to hold this over your, over your over your head anymore, and yeah, that sucked, and that was not a
Mm,
good thing to do, you
mm,
know. But he's okay, and but you know what, God forgave you, so going back as far as I could, even times with my little brothers and my friends, and just so there was a lot of that self-reflection, self-forgiving, and then there was this um got lost there for a moment. uh Really reminding myself, like, about expectations. Sometimes I just put too much expectations on me,
mm.
and it just like these are things that I don't think, you know, God even asked me to pick up,
Mm.
just being so hard on
Well,
myself.
you got thrown into the deep end of the swimming pool when you're 14.
Yeah,
Um, you know.
yeah, yeah. And every time me and my wife are going through this book called The Four Laws of Love by Jimmy Evans. It's such a great book. And every time we go through a chapter, we come to realize how unprepared we were, and and how under
How
researched.
old were you guys when you got married?
My wife's like, I was 21, my wife was 23, and every time we read a chapter, like, man, we really didn't have a whole lot of tools,
Mm,
and going back to that whole what I've been passionate about, like being an intentional uncle. Like, how can I partner with my sisters and my brothers? Like, I want them to be successful, and I want them to have a healthy life, and I want them to have as many tools in their possession as they can, because life can be hard, relationships can
mm,
be hard,
mm,
um, and and being intent. I didn't have a whole lot of uncles wanting to be in my life for some reason. They were in their own world, so I don't quite know what that was like.
mm,
But I said to myself, but I want to be that uncle that's in their lives, not just at baseball games, basketball games,
mm,
but I want to be able to, you know, intentionally, challenge them,
mm,
as they're being exposed to the world with things they say, things that they do, and really challenge them
mm,
to help them, see the world from a different perspective, but also give them tools. And one of the things that I've been doing is Snapchats. A lot of kids are on Snapchat these days.
mhm,
So you get a minute to record something. So I created two groups, one for my side of the family, nephews and nieces, and another one for my wife's side of nephews and nieces. And I pick one word. And this last word that we talked about was words. Words are powerful.
mm,
The average person speaks 7,000 words. And we put that out there in the world. And most importantly, we put that out on people's lives. Like,
mm,
it really has a real effect on people's lives. And I take that 1 minute to just share a little bit of insight. And at the end, I end it with some questions to kind of help them. Like, how do people feel around you when you speak?
mm.
How are you using
Nice.
your words to bring care and to bring understanding? Um, yeah, and then just kind of like, okay, Lord, I'm entrusting, because I can only do so much as an uncle living two
Nice.
and a half hours away. But if this is one creative way I
Mm,
can be in their lives, and I hope they listen to it, and whether I'm trusting that something will resonate. Um, but I got to make this count. I only get to be an uncle once.
mm. Yeah. This is part of the legacy you want to leave
Yeah,
with
yeah.
your nieces and nephews. Yeah.
Just
Uncle
trying to
Martin.
be that
Yeah.
uncle in your life, that cares, that's there. And
Mm,
maybe one day, when they're old enough, they they'll know that me and my wife are the kind of people that want to hear about their struggles, and wants to hear about, their doubts and questions. Like, we want to help them feel seen, feel
mm,
heard, understood, and
mm,
supported. And they know that Uncle Martin and Aunt Vosti are the types of individuals
mm,
that they can be safe around, to be vulnerable and to be angry, and to, like, you know have questions of their own as they become into their own little individuals with stories and dreams and desires and hopes.
mm. Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
so awesome. So awesome, Martin. The yeah, I I love that. And if not every minute uh
Yeah.
resonates, but some of them will. um, and just the fact that you're there doing it, you're there for them. That that's just amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, one thing before, you know, um, one thing that was really helpful too during just going back to that whole, those seasons of my life where I just felt vulnerable and scared. I think with
Mm,
scripture, it was such a wonderful moment to go back to the word of God and just to remember, like, Lord, uh I know I don't have to be afraid because your word says that perfect love casts out all fear. Lord, I know I'm not alone, for your word says that you are with me and for me and that you would not forsaken me. Lord, your word said, just kind of bringing back the word of God in front of me and reminding myself, my soul, my heart, my mind, and my body, like,
mm,
you know, God, this is what you said. And I'm choosing to embrace that again and to trust that you are good, that you are faithful, that you are present. And
mm,
there's times, Savan, because of this, my body was manifesting where I just felt like an elephant was on my chest. And I was like,
mm.
am I dying?
Are you gonna die? Yeah, yeah. Mm,
I couldn't even look at cars. I had to look up because I would just have another anxiety attack. But I remember after the doctor, my blood pressure was good, my oxygen levels were good. I know this was like yeah, I just had to like take longer walks and be like, touch my arm and be like, hey, you're good.
mm, mm,
You're good. And like,
mm,
be still, my heart,
mm.
and know that the Lord is with us and for us, and He is God. Be still, my mind.
Yeah.
And I would go through Psalms of David. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Mm,
this just became a lot more real for me in those moments where he feels
yeah.
like he's scared. And
Yeah. It you reread it with a different lens, having gone through that experience.
yeah, yeah. And it's man, it's fear is a real thing, you know. But I think it's Elizabeth Gilbert. One of her talks, she talks about, fear is a real thing, and it's a good thing that we acknowledge fear, but it's good to also put fear in its place. And it's like, you are real, like, you are real. But you're going to have a seat in the back seat, and you will not have access to the steering wheel, to the gears, to the
Mm,
lights. You're going to stay in the back and know your place. And but I think fear is also a good thing. I mean, what's even scripture talks about, um, um, is the first sign of wisdom. Fearing God is
mm,
is a man full of wisdom. I don't think that's exactly how it goes, but
mm.
um,
Yeah, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
thank you, Salon. And yeah, and it really reminded me of that scripture, but also like, okay, what are things that I need to let go of? And what are things that I need to embrace? What are things that need to be put in their place? And what are things that God is wanting me to receive and embrace as I surrender and trust? And and I think that experience, along with my wife's surgery and that whole recovery experience and turning 41, I don't know, but I just feel this sense of like more confidence, more freedom, more peace, more joy every day I go to work. Savan,
Mm,
10 minutes before I go into my work, I'm setting the tone, man. I'm like, God, I'm just thanking him, but I'm also surrendering my hopes and dreams and desires, but I'm also surrendering my fears, my worries, my concerns, my frustrations, my weaknesses, things that are out of my control. And God, it all belongs to you, Lord. It
mm.
all truly belongs to you. And help me to trust you again. Help me to,
You're putting it in its
yeah.
place. Yeah, all
When I,
of those things, even the good things, the hopes and dreams and expectations.
and saying thank you for things I don't have,
Mm,
and every time I walk into those, I have a part-time job at Office Depot. Wonderful, wonderful community I get to work with. And one of my coworkers says, "Are you ready, Martin?" And I'm walking through the doors just ready to, like, I got my badge and everything. And I go, "Oh, that's not the right question." She goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Are my customers ready for me?" Because I'm ready. Just to to be someone people want to be around, where people feel alive, where people feel
Mm,
seen, heard, understood. Like, it's not just when I put my coaching hat on, but just the way I am. And I want people
mm,
um, uh, to have joy and peace and hope. And there's
mm,
this guy who wrote that book, Emotional Health, not Emotional Health, that's Peter Scazzaro, but Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
mm,
And
mhm,
he writes these quote little blogs on LinkedIn, incredible. Um, and he says compassion, no, is it compassion? No, charisma. Sorry, charisma. What is the definition of charisma? It's not so much about people liking you, but people liking themselves when they're around you.
mm.
And I'm like, Lord, help me to be someone like that.
Yeah.
People feel like they like themselves. They can be not so hard on themselves, that they can
Mm,
their story matters, that they can make a difference today. That you know,
mm.
help me to be that kind of person again today, Lord, as I trust and surrender. And
I, I think that that phrase, like a non-anxious presence,
yeah,
it has been popular in Portland for the last couple of years. Um, uh, but you just like help me see that in a different way. It's not just about me not being anxious, but is my presence helping other people not be anxious?
yeah,
And are we bringing peace? Um, and God's care, God's grace, God's love, um, wherever we show up. Um,
yeah. And when we
love
do that,
that.
and when we do that, be ready, because people are drawn, to you, in the sense of people start sharing things. Like, I have
Mm,
this one kid. His name's Jordan. He just turned 18. He got the job. And I've never had a young kid come up to me. He goes, "Hey, Martin, you got a word for me today?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You're a Christian, right?" I go, "Yeah, yeah." Um, After hearing the way you are, um, I'm expecting every day, or every time I see you, I want a word from you. I want to learn something from you.
mm,
And I'm like, "What? This is awesome. Can you like rub off on all my nephews and nieces, and all my, but so I've included him in my life
well,
lesson.
I was gonna say, like, again, you are ready. Are you ready for me? Because I've been doing Snapchat for a minute.
Yeah, yeah. When I told him about life lessons with Martin, he goes, "Dude, can you add me to that group so that I can, like," and then I've had managers, just
Mm,
people just feel like they can, when it slows down, it's slowing down in the business that day, but
mm,
people are opening up their lives because
mm,
people are feeling seen,
mm,
heard, understood, and supported. And I think that's how Jesus was. Jesus was somebody who lived that kind of life, where people just didn't have to question it. They just wanted to be around him, and they just, because of how they felt around him. And that's not a uh, so much of a spiritual gift thing. That's not so much about. I mean, that's just a human need, right? We all want to
mm,
feel seen, heard, understood, supported as a human need. Like, we're screaming for that desire. Like, and people are looking like, where can I go? Who can I trust my heart with? And like, I don't even need an answer. I just need to like vent, or I just need somebody to share this with, And so yeah, yeah. So
mm,
yeah, I'm ready. And every day I'm like,
mm,
I'm ready. And the it's just something. It's not like I wasn't that individual, but it just something where I just feel so confident, and I'm sure of myself that Jesus is the way, the truth, and life. And with words or without words, you know, um, yeah, yeah, and that's who I try to be. You know, without degrees or no degrees, in a building, church building, no church building.
mm,
In the lights, or outside. In the back. Just I just want people to see Jesus, um, and he should. They see Jesus. And are drawn to him. And I don't know why we make it so hard. I don't know why we make Why is it so hard to see Jesus and know Jesus? I'm not talking about, John 3:16. I'm not talking about like quoting scripture or quoting, a passage or, just at a human level.
Mm,
Like it's it's not that hard.
mm,
And it took, maybe this panic attack of getting over myself and these false expectations, or maybe needing to forgive myself, or maybe just being able to cry with my pastors non-controllably in front of them for like almost 2 hours and just letting them love on me, and um but I'm convinced that he's real, and his love is real, his hope is real. um and every time I'm around people, I just I just love being around people. That's just who I am, and getting to hear their stories, and just be in awe of how God is at work, in ways that, in details, and how exciting to be alive and to be a part of what he's doing. How exciting to be on this podcast, and just to be a part of how he's doing that, in these interviews and these conversations. And
mm.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Yeah. I um I I see you. I
Yeah.
hear you.
Yeah.
And I understand. I feel understood. And thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting our listeners. I'm glad. I'm glad for this season for you. Thank you for coming on, Martin.
Yeah. Yeah. um Thank you for having me, and just giving me an opportunity, just to, like you said, to feel seen, heard, and understood. And just reminding me on this other side of the seat, this kid that I interviewed, he goes, "Anybody going to interview you one day?" And, and it's funny that he said that, because, like, well, actually, I interviewed a good friend of mine, but it's so important that we do that by the testimony of their word. You know, we need to be doing this more. And when you said "I see you," I immediately thought of Avatar.
Hmm.
Do you remember Avatar?
Good movie.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you remember that, every time the Avatar girl, who's played by Zoe Saldana, um, that community, that culture, they always begin, before they say anything, like, "I see you." There's something powerful, and people who aren't used to that feel overwhelmed that you would give somebody that you would give them that much attention. You know, and again, it's like, what would that look like, and how much would our lives be affected if we had more of that kind of attention? And so thank you for this space and this time to experience that for myself again. And my heart is full, Savan. You're such a blessing to me, bud.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much. Um, as we wrap things up for today, anything you how do folks uh connect with you?
Well, there's a couple ways. I have a website, it's martintorresjr.com. And there I kind of have all my, a little more detail about myself, more about coaching, my music. Um, Facebook, Martin Tojr, Instagram. But mostly you find all of that on my website. So it's like one stop, and uh, yeah. So whether you
Yeah,
just want to know more about me,
yeah,
um, yeah, that's
yeah,
where I would.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Uh, if you need an Uncle Martin, connect with him uh, on his websites. Everybody needs an Uncle Martin. Um, I don't have Snapchat. I can't add another app. Um, so this is my vote for uh your Snapchats. Uh, uh, put them on Instagram. That's my vote, or TikTok, because everybody's on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking of that, of either doing it like that or on YouTube, um, because I would
But
love to,
on all of them,
on all of them.
more more Uncle Martin, please.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because now I know for sure I'm supposed to be doing that,
Come on.
because been on my heart, and I'm like, should I do that? Do I feel like other people need to hear this? And so you just kind of confirm that.
Do it, brother.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you on there.
Yeah. Thanks, Sivan. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Be blessed.